Everyone, it's Karen, and on today's podcast, I have author again, Brice Odom. He was on my last podcast, and this is part two for him. Thank you for coming on again. I really appreciate it, Brice.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes, sir. So today we're just going to talk about all of your books because I found it so interesting last time that you brought up that you have your short stories and other ones. So I want to talk about all of it. Just
okay.
Let's go. Let's actually start with, obviously the first one and kind of go down the line if you don't mind.
Right. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
So I have 5 books published. So I guess we'll start with the overview. But I've got 5 books published. 4 of them are fiction, prose and poetry.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one bit of nonfiction. If you look up there, if I can get my finger to look right as I see myself in the camera, that green book up there in the corner is my one nonfiction. And we'll unless you got questions about that one, we'll probably stick to the fiction ones. But it's about Jimmy Carter, 1962. But it's basically my senior thesis from college.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Just spruced up a little bit, and but that's hence the green and white. If you know anything about Jimmy Carter, his campaign material was always green and white, so that's why the cover is just green and white.
Mm-hmm.
But the first book I published, though, was the short story collection, Light of All Lights. We talked a little bit about this at the end of part 1. And it is 9 years worth of short stories. Or I should say it's curated from 9 years worth of short stories. There was, and it is an eclectic collection. It's got fantasy, it's got magical realism, it's got a detective story. There are 3 or 4 stories with dragons in it. There's a ghost story. There's science fiction. The shortest story is about 150 words long, and the longest story in the book, not in Microsoft Word, but in the book, was 30 pages. So, it's a pretty wide range. So, if I'm ever at a vendor event and someone's like, "Well, I don't have a lot of time to read," well, here, let me give you this. This has stuff you can read in one short sitting in the waiting room. So it's a wonderful little book, and my covers are always, I like a very simple cover, and my brother has a wonderful eye for photography, and so any photograph on my books is from him, and that is actually a tree. We're from Georgia, and he lived in Athens for a time, and there's a tree in Athens, Georgia, called the tree that owns itself. And we could go down that rabbit hole of how that's possible, but Athens, Georgia, there's a tree that owns itself. And he just got a wonderful picture of the sunlight. And so it was very collaborative to create that book with him, because he was helping me with the cover. He provided some help with copy editing and things like that. So it was a very labor of love. And since we talked about that a little bit last time, the only thing I guess I would say is the big stories, if you're interested in it, not just you, Karen, but anyone listening. The big stories, or there's a detective story called Nasty Bruce in Short. There is a couple magical realism stories, Poisonberry, which my brother continues to say is one of his favorite stories I've ever written, is the lead story in that collection. And if you like music, that's a big music history. I live in Macon, Georgia, where we have a lot of music history, and I was very inspired by.
Okay.
We're the home of the Allman Brothers, Otis Redding, and pretty much anybody who's anybody in Southern rock probably touched our soil at some point.
Yeah, I know the Allman Brothers. I've heard of them. I listen to them.
They're classic.
Music's my life.
They're absolutely wonderful, and so they're a big influence on, or just Macon's music history is a big influence there.
Right.
And then if you're science fiction, I kind of have a epic story, and that's probably the closest. I don't write romance, but there's a love story where they need to be, and the science fiction one definitely is a big one, and it's very important to it. Especially to its resolution. And then there's a wonderful the last one is a big world building fantasy story. It's the longest one in the collection. And I love that story a lot. It was the last story I wrote before I started putting things together for the collection. And but that story came about because of my own students. And we were doing an activity where they had to make their own god. We were teaching, it was a class on humanities, Greek and Roman mythology and culture and philosophy and things like that. And they were having to make their own gods. They go, Mr. Odom, we're having to make our own god. You should make one. So on the whiteboard, I made this dragon god named Sulfura. And I went, that's pretty good. And over the course of the school year, because it was a long one, over the course of the school year, kind of kept coming back to it until it was done. And it was very world building fantasy. So it was a lot of fun to write. And again, I've never written anything about a teacher. I kind of refuse to do that. It's where I live my life. I try and write not my life. So, but my students have on multiple occasions been inspirations for what has come out in fiction. So, in some way or form. So that's a wonderful collection there. And again, and I've told this story elsewhere before, so I don't have that big a bubble of people who follow me. So for those of you who haven't heard it, which is hopefully most of you, one of my students actually read the book. And she was very smart, so she was usually ahead of the game in my class. And they're working on some assignment, and she just raised her hand and waves me over. Okay, can I help? You got a question? Mr. Odom, I just read a story in a bar, which is the name of a story. And I go, okay, did you like it? Who hurt you? I mean, nobody hurt me. It's just a story. It's like, Mr. Odom, I read the story. Somebody hurt you. So, it's one of my favorite readers' reactions I've ever had. So yeah, my students continue to interact with my fiction in various ways.
That is interesting. That's cute, though. I mean, that she analyzed your book that way and can see who hurt you, but nothing. Like we all have a different perspective on books, and that's kind of neat.
She's an avid reader, and she's developing a good talent as a writer too. So hopefully, one day she'll be, you'll be continuing doing these, and you can have her on eventually.
Oh, okay. I hope so.
One day, whenever she gets there. My next book is called Grain of Sand. It's a very thin book. You can see it's a very thin book. But this is actually the book for how I got into indie publishing. It's the second book, but it's how I got in there. Because my brother was, as I said, he's one of my people who will edit for me and read stuff over. And I was submitting 5 poems to one place and a long narrative poem for a contest. Neither worked out really in terms of winning anything, but he had these files, and they were all poetry. And he decided, as a surprise birthday gift, he went to a website where you could do one-off, so you could. There was no connection to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anything, but you could do a one-off, and then you can buy as many as you want and sell them all as all you want. Forgive me to that website. I don't remember what your name. But as a birthday gift, I opened up and suddenly had a book with my name on it, and which was just an absolute. I was flabbergasted. I had never published any. I had one thing published at that point, and so it was a really wonderful surprise. And what we did after we did the short story collection is I wrote an introduction, and we had to change a little bit on the formatting when we switched over to the Barnes & Noble one, but that's how this book came about. And if you like King Arthur, if you were a fan of King Arthur, this is the book I keep trying to get people to buy when they say they like King Arthur, because the big narrative poem is called The Chains of Camelot. And if you've read any kind of variation or watched any variation on King Arthur that deals with the actual fall of Camelot. There's always a moment when Guinevere and Lancelot get caught.
Yep.
And in most versions, Lancelot saves her, but by saving her, the round table is shattered. Both, and sometimes literally, most of the time metaphorically. And this is a narrative poem that takes place in that moment. And it follows your main thoroughfare character is Sir Gawain, who was King Arthur's nephew. And that has a special place in my heart as well, because it did eventually. We talked about this last week. Pantsers and planners. I planned on writing one King Arthur poem. I planned on one King Arthur poem, and then I wrote a little poem that, for lack of a better word, was a sonnet. It wasn't actually a sonnet. It doesn't follow the rules of sonnet, but for lack of a better word, that's what we're going to call it. And then I'm like, okay, that was good. That was fun. It has nothing to do with the other poem. That was fun. All right. And then like a year later, I wrote a poem about Arthur meeting Guinevere. I'm like, oh, I could write that. And, and I'd always had this idea, well, maybe one day come back to it as a spiritual prequel and sequel to the original poem. So I'm like, well, I could do those poems, and then I could write a couple of poems to go with this one that kind of go the arc of their relationship.
Right.
And then I could write a couple other of these little sonnets that kind of go with the characters. And I'm like, okay, so 9 poem cycle. That's fantastic. Great idea.
Right.
Ended up at 25 poems.
Oh, okay.
Over 4 years. As I kept going, oh, well, I wrote this, so I should add this. And then
right.
If I'm going to do this, I need to do that too.
Exactly.
And so that is, I keep saying I'm going to query to agents for really proper stuff. And there's 2 works I have that I want to do that with. One's an unpublished Southern Gothic novel. And the other one, and maybe the one I really would like to put out there properly, because there's nothing improper about indie publishing. It's just more access to more pipelines. But the cycle is called The Dreams of Camelot. So I probably will try and query it over the next, I don't know how long I'll give myself to query it before I give up and go ahead and just like, all right, we're doing ourselves. But at some point, keep an ear out for Dreams of Camelot. And until then, buy Grains of Sand so you can get the preview of what those poems are kind of like. And also, it's just really good. I love King Arthur.
Yeah, I do too. My mom kind of got me into that a lot. She's into medieval stuff, and I just like the swords and stuff. That's what I like, the fighting and all of that. Like, I don't know. I like stuff that gives me like an adrenaline rush. So like football and stuff like that, like for now time instead of that. But like, just something adrenaline rush. So, but yeah, I really like that.
Well, whenever that comes out, then you'll there are some poems with great moments of adrenaline and excitement and triumph, and then moments that will just break your heart.
Oh, great.
So the full range of emotions.
Exactly. That's how you got to do it when you're writing.
So the next book that I published was the history book. The history book. And we've already talked about that one, but a little bit. That it's a wonderful book if you are interested in history. To anyone out there and you want more questions, please DM me. I'll be happy to talk with you about it, or just pick up the book on Amazon. It's available along with all the others, but it's looking at the first election Jimmy Carter had to state office in Georgia, and there was some drama that went with it, and it's looking at bias in newspaper coverage, both local as well as statewide. So, and then that brings us to the more recent stuff. And this is the last couple years in terms of writing longer stuff has been really exciting. It's really coincided with getting success with getting stories accepted in magazines. So for the last couple years, as much as my bubble is still remains somewhat small, and by somewhat I mean is, uh, it has really felt like I've been starting to achieve, and not just, okay, this is my hobby that
Right.
I do because I love it and will continue to do it regardless of success levels, but that there's been actually some recognition, I guess, that I can point to, like, okay, yes, there's something good happening.
Yeah.
Because it is tough to keep writing, and not getting anywhere. No one to say, hey, we like what you wrote.
Right.
And it be more than just the people in your immediate life.
Yes.
But the they both came about kind of in interesting circumstances. So I was in a really major rut. I had finished a novella that I think probably I'll end up self-publishing. I might query it along with Dreams of Camelot, but I think I'm going to self-publish it. But it came out of I wrote it after COVID, and there's definitely some influence there to that. But then I'm like, I finished it, and then I couldn't write anything. I just didn't have. I was just kind of drawing blanks on ideas, and what I ultimately did was kind of twofold. One, I gave myself a challenge. Like, Brice, you got a YouTube channel that because you have a YouTube account. Just to keep thinking about writing, talking about writing, let's do a YouTube channel about literature, and you got to make a post every Sunday for a year. So 52 videos, and took a lot of playing out, and it really helped. It started getting the brain working again. I was creating stuff. I had a couple radio plays in there. So one's a Western, and the other is a horror play. They're both about, I don't know if either one hits 20 minutes, but they, the first one's called Imminent Domain. It's a Western, and I did all the voices. We were, we were probably out of lockdown by that point, but still doing a lot of social distancing.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't having people come over to my house. And so I did all the voices, and really having to change my voice completely, going high, low, giving a little extra accents to them and things like that. And when I finished, because the villain had a real deep, gravelly voice, and kind of down there in this range right here, how dare you? And when I got to the last scene and did the last take, there were no other takes possible, because especially the villain's voice had wrecked my throat, and there's nothing left.
Yeah, I get so.
And so I think his last line was, let's see, "Get off my land." I think that was his last line, and then gunshots fire. And so those aren't published in proper writing, but if you're interested in those stories, the YouTube, they're on my YouTube channel. There's a playlist called Two Parters, and there's a part 1 and part 2. And the same thing with the horror story, which was a lot of fun to make. And that one was later on in the year, so we were out of social distancing. We were still being careful, but we were out of social distancing.
Right.
And, I had no problem inviting people to my house. And so that one I cast it. I got friends who helped. I did one of the roles. My brother played one. There's multiple antagonists in it. And my brother, who loves to put villains in fiction, he got to be one of the main antagonists. And it's a radio play, so you don't see anything, but he eats the scenery. He chews the scenery. It's great. He does a wonderful job. And it's called now I gotta say not House of the Banshee. It's about banshees. Wow, I'm blanking on the title of my own story. The Halls of the Banshees. There it is. Halls of the Banshees.
Nice.
so that turn was a lot of fun because that was because I wrote the script, but then we were all okay. Hold on, can we make this slight twist? Either because I'm just having trouble with the line, or we just need to reemphasize something. So that was
Right.
really fun and collaborative. But
Right.
all of that year of doing all that stuff got things going, and I had some ideas, but I was struggling to get to, all right, this is what I'm doing next. And November was coming up, and November is National Novel Writing Month. There's the official challenge, which is 50,000 words in a month. I am a school teacher. I cannot do 50,000 words in a month.
Right.
Not
we have full-time jobs.
Right. Not going to happen.
Exactly.
I've been in sales before too. If I was in sales, then maybe I could have done that. But in teaching, there's brain power, not happening.
Right.
It's gone at the end of the day. And so I said, all right, well, I have this idea of an epistolary novel. Mm-hmm. So it's a fantasy story told in letters, and hence the name of it, Letters from the Frontier. Yes. And I said, well, let's do National Novel Writing Month, but we're going to create our own goal. So we're doing it unofficially. And so my goal was 5 letters a day. And as I did 5 letters a day, the story kept building, though I realized very quickly the story wasn't going to work. As I originally had the basic plot outline in, it was not going to work, especially as an epistolary novel. And so, and that was by like day 3. There's 30 days in November. So it became a very improvised story where I was really pulling stuff from everywhere to come up with plot points and names, and every captain in every person who's got the rank of captain has some connection to Star Trek in his name. Either the actor or the character. It's usually an actor or a character who. But yeah, just made so many connections to Star Trek for captains' names in there. But all the names were pulled out of everywhere. But it was having to move it along, balance moving the story along with creating reality, doing real world building as we go, and then also pulling it in for a landing on November 30th. And really and trying to keep pace. So there's a series on the YouTube channel. There's a series of videos because I was using social media as a way of, I didn't really care if anyone was watching or reading the Instagram posts, but I was using it to keep myself honest. Like, okay, I'm behind pace today. All right, so I've caught up today, and that kind of stuff. So it came out really well. So it was a month for the first draft, and I did spend a year editing it before it came out. And then, so that was it came out in November of 2023, and it has been it's been pretty well received. It did get reviewed in a fantasy magazine, Crimson Quill Quarterly. It's gotten a couple Bookstagram, I think 1 Bookstagram review along the way, and the feedback from the people who have read it has been very wonderful. I've gotten some great reviews there. One person said, hey, I actually been wanting to read fantasy again, and this helped me get back to reading fantasy. So that felt really good. That people who've read it have really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that does. I'm the same way about when you said a little bit about COVID and stuff. I feel like some people kind of took it, I don't know, because we all take things differently. So the way I took it was, since I'm an artist and writer, everything, I'm creative in all different shapes and forms. I was like, this is the perfect time that I don't have a job. Like, I can just sit at home and just write. Because at that point, I was still living with my parents and stuff. So I didn't have to really support anything. I mean, yeah, I know most people didn't have that opportunity, that they lost their job and they had no way to make money and stuff. But for me, it was really good because I wrote consistently. I'm like, this is perfect. If I didn't feel like writing that day, I'm like, oh, we're painting today, or we're gonna draw. Like, it was amazing. It's what I've always wanted to do. And then we had to go back to work, and I
I
was
know, dang it.
happy about that.
But that there was a lot of uh creatively speaking, there's a lot of stuff. The again, I probably will end up self-publishing it sometime in the next couple years, if I don't query it. But the novella that I wrote in the aftermath of lockdown is about this giant monster coming out of the sea and slowly making it toward the city. And our main characters are stuck in a room in the capital city.
Oh gosh.
And waiting for death to arrive. So I can't imagine how being in lockdown and stuck in the four walls of my house, waiting for death on the outside. I can't imagine how that created that book. Can't imagine.
That's a really good thought, though. I didn't even think about I mean, I did write a few little poems about the disease or whatever, because during that time, since music is really big for me, I listen to music pretty much 24/7. I have to have it just even if I'm not listening to it, background noise and stuff. But at that time, I listened to Bring Me the Horizon. I don't know if you know their band, but kind of like emo. But anyways, they were reporting, because I was following them on Instagram. They were reporting about they were struggling and stuff too. So they were writing their songs. I'm like, you know what? This is actually a really good time. That's kind of, again, what sparked me more to write my short little poems about a disease taking us over and stuff. So, but
no,
we only have about 10 minutes, it said. So,
all right. Well, last book. This is the most recent one. This is Moonlight in the Tombstones. It's again a novella, so you can see it's thinner than Letters from the Frontier, which is that versus that versus that. But also came out in interesting circumstances. Amazon had a serialized story platform called Kindlevella, and they had a contest trying to promote it. And I had no clue about either the contest or the platform, actually. And a friend of mine who I used to work with sent me, hey, have you heard about this contest? And I was looking into it, and it had a 2-month window to write in. And she sent it to me halfway through. And 2 days before students showed up.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, and it had to be a minimum of 10,000 words, and it had to be 10 chapters. So I'm like, well, my first thought was, okay, this will be something I'll try next year. I'll come in prepared next year. And then I was like, well, got nothing. I don't have any other idea. Let's just take a look at it. Let's sit down with it tonight, and if we can come up with an idea, we'll see what we can do. If we can really come up with something. And so I was brainstorming. I was actually thinking about a werewolf. I was literally brainstorming in titles. And I was like, well, maybe a werewolf story. So what would that be? That'd be like Moonlight and Moonlight in the Tombstones. And then as soon as I said it, I'm like, nope, that's a detective novel. That's film noir. And I love film noir, Maltese Falcon, Chinatown, love those movies. And the hardball detective kind of mystery. And I launched I all the engines were working. And I mean, realistically, I don't know if you know any teachers, but after the first couple days after the students come back, then the homework starts, and your life is gone for like a month and a half. And until things settle down a little bit as you get into the routine of the year. So realistically, I'm like, okay, I have 6 days. That's how long I have to write this. And I wrote the entire novella, which came out to be about 18,500 words. So I blew by the 10,000 word mark, and I did it in 6 days. 10 chapters in 6 days. And I've heard stories of people who do pump out drafts like that. I'm like, I'll never do that. And then so I'm like, oh, that's how it happens. And so I think Casino Royale, I think, was finished in a matter of days. The first James Bond novel, I think, was written in a matter of days.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of fun, the hecticness. But I woke up, I went to work, I came home, I ate, I sat down and I wrote, and then I went to sleep. And and it is, if you like film noir, this is the book for you. Highly recommend it. It's got a great detective. He's wearing a fedora, just like a good film noir. There's a beautiful woman, and we have no clue whose side she's really on. Like a good femme fatale. And the villains are pretty compelling too, I think. So it was a lot of fun to write, and both Letters from the Frontier and Moonlight and Tombstones, as well as the other three, are on Amazon right now, $12.
All right. Well, thank you again for telling us all about those books. That was interesting. I'm really glad I thought of to do part 2 for this because I like learning about all the books and stuff. And there's a few of them I have my eyes on now for sure. So,
Well,
um,
well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for just going. Yeah, just I have no questions. Just here, talk about each book as you go. I'm like, okay, here we go.
yeah, of course. Like I said, this is all about you and your stuff. So, but thank you again for coming on for both parts. I really appreciate this. And to everyone out there, thank you for joining us today. I hope everyone has a good rest of your day. Bye.